The seventh chapter of the book Embedded Power discusses the intricate balance between domestic and international economic structures in China, illustrating how internal economic policies and global trade dynamics interplay to shape China's growth trajectory. It begins with anecdotal reflections on globalization's pervasive reach, observed through the ubiquity of Chinese goods worldwide, juxtaposed against anti-globalization sentiments that have brewed in other countries, particularly the United States. This context sets the stage for an exploration of how China's economic rise, catalyzed by globalization, has provoked significant international adjustments and conflicts. China's economic ascent since joining the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2001 has been profound. By 2010, its manufacturing value added surpassed that of the United States, marking it as the world's largest manufacturing hub. The scale and sophistication of China's exports have consistently advanced, with high-technology products accounting for a substantial portion. This transformation has not only restructured global supply chains, but also created tensions as China's dominance disrupted established economic hierarchies. The chapter identifies two core imbalances stemming from this growth: a domestic economic structure overly reliant on production and investment at the expense of consumption, and an international trade imbalance fueled by volatile foreign demand and recurrent trade conflicts. Internally, the chapter delves into China's low consumption rates as a hallmark of its economic imbalance. In 2018, household consumption represented only 44% of GDP, significantly lower than in developed economies where this figure approaches 70%. This shortfall is attributed to a combination of low disposable incomes and high savings rates, shaped by structural factors such as government policies, demographic trends, and societal expectations. Residents' disposable income as a percentage of GDP has oscillated, while savings rates surged during the early 2000s before slightly declining in recent years. High savings rates, often linked to cultural and policy-driven factors, are further compounded by housing market dynamics and insufficient public expenditure on education and healthcare. These systemic issues underscore the influence of local government strategies that prioritize land and infrastructure development over direct investment in human capital and public welfare. The document explains that local government's land finance model, reliance on land sales to fund development, has driven up property prices, forcing families to allocate substantial resources to housing costs. This, in turn, suppresses consumption and inflates savings. The chapter also highlights that structural disparities in public service provision, tied to the hukou household registration system, exacerbate inequalities between urban and migrant populations. Migrant workers often save excessively to support families left in their rural hometowns, further depressing national consumption rates. China's low consumption is also linked to income distribution patterns that favor government and corporate sectors over households. The rapid industrialization and urbanization of the 1990s and 2000s necessitated intensive capital investment, which prioritized returns to capital over labor. This shift, coupled with state-owned enterprise, SOE reforms and industrial policy, skewed income shares towards enterprises and the state. While economic growth elevated overall living standards, the relative share of household income within the national income declined, undermining broader consumption capacity. Local governments' preference for large-scale industrial projects reinforced this imbalance, as subsidies and incentives for capital-intensive industries diminished the proportional economic benefits accruing to labor. Chapter 6 on the international front. The chapter examines how China's overproduction has necessitated substantial exports to absorb surplus capacity, fostering dependency on foreign markets and amplifying global trade tensions. The disproportionate growth of China's manufacturing sector compared to global counterparts has eroded traditional economic structures in developed nations, notably within the G7 economies. China's surpluses in goods production have translated into trade surpluses with key partners, particularly the United States, which has emerged as the largest deficit country. The chapter contextualizes these dynamics within the broader framework of globalization's impact on employment and industrial distribution, noting that while globalization has redistributed industrial activity, its perceived effects on job losses have fueled populist backlash in developed economies. The narrative shifts to the U.S.-China trade conflict as a case study of the economic tensions born from these imbalances. The United States has frequently attributed domestic job losses to the influx of Chinese imports, branding this phenomenon the China shock. However, data reveal that U.S. manufacturing job losses predate China's WTO accession and primarily result from automation and productivity gains rather than direct trade effects. Despite this, the rhetoric of trade protectionism has gained political traction, exacerbating bilateral tensions. In addition to employment concerns, the United States perceives China's technological advancements as a direct challenge to its global leadership. The chapter tracks China's trajectory in manufacturing, international patent applications, and high-quality scientific research, illustrating how these indicators have approached or surpassed U.S. levels over recent decades. This progress underscores the shift from China's initial role as a manufacturing hub reliant on imported technology to a more autonomous innovator with growing influence in global technology and intellectual property spheres. China's ability to integrate and upgrade its manufacturing supply chains has been a critical factor in this transformation, exemplified by its evolving role in producing high-value goods like smartphones and other electronics. The chapter critiques the sustainability of the trade war's impact on innovation, noting that while restrictive measures may temporarily hinder Chinese enterprises, they could also spur domestic substitution strategies, bolstering China's self-reliance in critical technologies. Concurrently, the fragmentation of global markets risks undermining both countries' long-term innovation capacities by severing synergies between the world's largest consumer market and its leading innovation hub. In response to these multifaceted challenges, China has articulated a dual circulation strategy that prioritizes domestic economic cycles while leveraging international markets. This pivot reflects a strategic recalibration aimed at reducing dependency on volatile foreign demand and mitigating external risks. Central to this strategy is the imperative to boost household incomes and consumption. The chapter outlines key reforms necessary to achieve these goals, including enhancing social welfare systems, promoting labor mobility, and restructuring income distribution to favor households. Urbanization emerges as a cornerstone of this rebalancing effort. By fostering population migration to cities and improving urban living conditions through better public services, the government seeks to stimulate service sector growth and consumption. However, achieving sustainable urbanization requires systemic reforms, particularly in land and housing markets, as well as the hookah system. The chapter argues that successful urbanization depends on shifting local governments' fiscal reliance away from land sales towards more equitable and stable revenue sources. Further, the chapter emphasizes the need to recalibrate the roles of government and market forces. It advocates reducing government intervention in industrial investment while enhancing its focus on human capital development through education and healthcare spending. By transitioning from a production-oriented model to a service-oriented governance framework, local governments can foster a more balanced and resilient economic structure. The chapter concludes by addressing the global implications of China's economic strategies. Expanding domestic consumption not only mitigates trade tensions by reducing reliance on exports, but also enhances China's attractiveness as a consumer market. Greater integration into global value chains, coupled with strategic openness to imports, supports both domestic and international economic stability. However, achieving these objectives requires a delicate balance of reform and innovation, as well as navigating the complexities of a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape.